Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Aisha Tariq Sethi and I welcome all of you to our webinar today. Today we are going to talk about promoting a culture of wellness at the workplace, and we have our esteemed guest Mr. Zaid bin Rashid with us. So before I introduce the topic and we talk a bit about what wellness is and why is it important at the workplace, I would like to request Mr. Zaid to introduce himself and then we'll take it from there. So hello Zaid, it's great to have you here today. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Aisha. Hello, and assalamu alaikum, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Just a brief introduction. I am currently managing corporate development with a logistics startup called Neem.pro. And I've worked in various sectors in Pakistan with MNCs, with big corporates in Pakistan, with non-profits. A lot of my experience was in non-profits as well. And most recently, I've been engaged in the startup sector. Uh, this is my second startup right now where I'm working.
All right, great to hear that. And so, what has been your relationship to corporate wellness in the times that you worked? And how have you experienced corporate wellness at the different workplaces where you took lead in setting up the systems and everything else?
As an employee, obviously, I've engaged with wellness systems and initiatives from day one. Um, my first employment was with a bank, and that's where banks are massive organizations and they have a lot of people. But I was very surprised back then. It was the start of my career to learn about certain policies that they had to encourage wellness, and that's really where I started getting introduced to this whole concept of wellness. In terms of playing a leadership role towards wellness, that I would say was more in my work with the nonprofit most recently, and then in the startups that I've been with, because I had leadership positions with these firms, and especially when we talk about startup, wellness, even though wellness usually falls under the purview of, let's say, HR or the people function, uh, but much like how HR has now transferred into a line responsibility, I believe so is wellness. Wellness is a line responsibility, and it's everybody's stake in that. Whether you're a business development leader or you're an HR leader, you need to be concerned with the wellness of, and specifically the policies around wellness in your organization. So that's, I would say, what my experience with wellness has been. I mean, we can go into the depths of different things that I've experienced as this session continues.
Sure, awesome. For our viewers, I would like to first of all enrich their understanding on what wellness is. Traditionally, our understanding of wellness is that we should be leading a stress free life. Wellness is about taking care of yourself, having some me time, having work life balance. So, while all of these different topics or different areas do fit into wellness, if studied on a pure academic level, or wellness if understood in its full beauty and its full entirety, is much more than uh, self-care and work-life balance, or leading a stress-free life. So the Global Institute of Wellness basically defines wellness as the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. So that being said, uh, wellness is multidimensional. So when we talk about wellness, we talk about mental wellness, we talk about spiritual wellness, physical, emotional, social, environmental, and even financial wellness. I mean, these are all the different ways in which, or all the different categories or the concepts in which wellness is understood. As Zed rightly pointed out, it is just not a responsibility of the human resource department, but the responsibility of leadership, of line and every employee in the organization to work towards a culture of wellness. But for that, wellness needs to be understood as for what it is. So, Zed, my first question to you is that what are some of the common challenges that organizations face when promoting a culture of workplace wellness, especially in Pakistan? So, what do you think are the barriers to implementing or driving a culture of wellness at the workplace?
In my experience, I believe that the two key challenges are an understanding around wellness. So just like you just you enrich the audience's understanding right now. It's a multi-dimensional topic. It's not just for example, related to just physical health. That's number one. So an understanding around the holistic nature of wellness. And number two, I do believe, look, we in Pakistan, we've had some challenging times, right? So the willingness to dedicate resources is also something that uh, comes up as a challenge, and each organization has to cater to it in a different way. So I believe these are the two key challenges that you have, and then within that, you also need to, so adding a third one, even though I said there's two key challenges, but adding a third one is also figuring out what wellness means to different people in the organization. Each organization has different
Hmm.
functions, so what wellness or how to realize wellness or put in place policies of wellness for my technology team, for example, would be
Hmm.
different from, let's say, the operations team that is actually doing physical work on the ground. So ये
Hmm.
जो है वो तीन चीजें जब कंबाइन होती हैं, तो आई बिलीव दैट they kind of act as a barrier or create hesitance.
Sure. So, can you share some examples of some of the different interpretations of wellness that you have experienced in your leadership roles? Especially, you worked at Aman Foundation, obviously, which is known for providing. Obviously, it's part of the healthcare sector, so it forms an important part of the wellness industry naturally. So, what are the different interpretations of wellness that you have experienced in your leadership roles, and how do you think that those interpretations have sometimes served as obstacles to actually executing on ground wellness initiatives?
So you see, the biggest the most common, let's say, perception is that you have to spend money on wellness. So ये जो आप interpretation की बात कर रही हैं, तो सबसे
Mm-hmm.
पहले जो चीज़ आती है वो ये आती है कि we have to develop something where so in order to develop a wellness program, we need to fix a budget for it, and we need to spend money on it, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the only way wellness can be achieved. And within
Mm-hmm.
that, the focus has always been on physical wellness a lot, um,
Mm-hmm.
and also slightly towards also letting people go on time, or work life balance जिसको हम कहते हैं, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so this is the most prominent um, interpretation, right, that I've come
Mm-hmm.
across for the most part of my career. But I would say, you know, right now, it's the age of information, and I would say today's Pakistan and working environment, people do have, they are starting to understand that it's much more. It's not just about physical well-being. There's also mental well-being and financial well-being and social well-being, right? So अगर मैं अमन फाउंडेशन की आपको मिसाल दूं, तो उसमें हमारे इमरजेंसी हेल्थ केयर की सर्विसेज होती थी अमन हेल्थ के अंडर, राइट? सो अमन हेल्थ के अंडर जो लोग एम्बुलेंसेस को मैन करते थे, आर पैरामेडिक्स.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to imagine these people, they would be on the road all day, right, on shifts, and they would have to be confronted with people in medical emergencies all day long, day in, day out. That was their job. So
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine the amount of mental stress that could lead to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we talk about things like during COVID, because when COVID
Mm-hmm.
came in, we didn't really know how to respond to it, and our ambulance team were actually frontline workers in that fight. So there was a very little understanding about how COVID spreads and what kind of risks one is putting themselves in as
Mm-hmm.
being a paramedic. तो अमन में हम लोगों ने बहुत फोकस किया on making sure that our ambulance team and our paramedics are getting the access to mental health counseling that they require, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one example. The other example
Mm-hmm.
is within Aman, we actually had a gym, because we
Mm-hmm.
had people, we had, number one, we had our ambulance staff that was spread across Karachi, but we also had a lot of people within the office who would spend day in, day out on their desks. So we had a gym, and we had a membership for the gym, so employees were meant to contribute to it, but it was kept as a very nominal charge, and it was also staggered across your hierarchies, right? So as
Okay.
as a GM, I would be paying much higher that someone as a, let's say, an officer level person would probably be paying around 200-300 rupees a month. So
Mm-hmm.
these are the but the underlying kind of message from my side here is that there are often things that are hidden where you don't realize it. Even जो mental health की मैंने आपको बात बताई on the paramedic
Mm-hmm.
staff, it was something that uh, we when we were researching how to make the life of our frontline workers easier, we came across in-depth analysis about this topic in international, more developed from international markets and more developed economies, right? And we started to understand the importance of it. And when COVID hit, then we really understood that this is extremely necessary because these people were essentially हम सब के लिए वो खड़े हुए थे, right? So we needed to make sure that they had the support that they needed, and we actually worked with the government of Sindh and we launched a helpline around this. Telehealth को हमने बहुत utilize किया था, where
Mm-hmm.
people could simply dial in and get access to the sort of mental health counseling that they need, especially around the people who are the frontline workers in COVID.
And do you actually think that it costed as much as a common perception is? I mean, I think it's the little things which add up towards promoting a culture of wellness, and and they don't always have to like cost a lot of money as it's commonly perceived. So what was your experience in terms of spending and expenditure around wellness?
So I mean, it's a varied experience, right? So I've worked for a very large. I'll start off with the example of a bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Banks are massive. They have thousands of workers, and they have workers that are dispersed across geographies. But during my time, what really struck to me, and I said this was my first job, was that they had the concept in the bank that I was working with had a concept of block leave. Okay,
Hmm.
now everybody is already allocated certain amount of annual leave,
Yeah.
but the bank mandated it that 2 weeks block leave must be in each employee's portal, right? Whatever जो हमारा HRMS था, and it was surprising to me कि हमारे जो मैनेजर थे
Hmm.
उन उनके ऊपर बाकायदा प्रेशर था to make sure, and he had a massive team, he had a team of 25, and
Mm-hmm.
every day when that time came where the year was like we were in the last second half of the year, इतनी emails आई उनको कि make sure each person has their 2 week block leave. Now what does that indicate, right? This is not an
Mm-hmm.
additional cost to the company. The company has already decided at the time of uh, hiring a resource that they will get X number of days leave during the year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But just the act of making sure that the employee avails that, and the understanding that by going on leave, it's actually to ensure that this person maintains his contribution to the company. The contribution that is actually costing us because we pay this person, right? So ये बड़ी एक अच्छी चीज़ थी. अच्छा फिर मैं एंग्रो की मिसाल लेता हूँ where I've also worked, and this is that's where we know each other from,
Yeah.
coincidentally. Engro is the one of the largest conglomerates in Pakistan, and it is a very resource heavy company, and the wellness initiatives over there were much different, and I dare say they probably costed Engro money as well, right?
Yeah.
For example, yoga के लिए हमारे पास I had the option of availing yoga in our cafeteria
Yeah.
twice a week for free,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then we had partnerships with the boot camp, and we had partnerships with जहाँ पे हम बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्काउंट मिलता था एम्प्लॉई को, right?
Yeah.
And we had partnerships, we had corporate packages with gyms जहाँ पे
Yes, we
हमें
did.
बहुत बहुत ही subsidized rate पे
Yeah.
हमें gym मिलता था. Then we had corporate packages for entertainment organizations as well, where one could
Yeah.
for I used to avail that a lot with my family on the weekends. I would take them,
Mhm.
and it was literally, number one, there was no cost to me of the membership,
Yeah.
and number two, even everything that I would avail at that place, I would get 50% off, or 75% off on everything.
Not to
So
mention the ergonomics awareness sessions that used to take place, and I still remember my
yeah,
learnings, regarding maintaining your posture
yeah,
and what are positive ergonomics and what are negative ones. I mean, I think these
I
are the
remember that too.
terminologies probably had never like even come across the term ergonomics before those awareness sessions, and I think those go a long way. And if you were to look at a practical
And I should just
yeah,
to add
please,
to
yeah,
that point is that those didn't cost. So Engro
yeah,
also was using like
exactly,
a mix. It was using a mix of
yeah,
things, right? So एक
yeah,
तरफ वो subsidized services
mm,
का access दे रहे थे अपने employees को, which cost money, sure. But on the other
mm,
side, having a session with your employees and building that
yeah,
culture where the employee understands that yes, the organization cares about us, and educating us on ergonomics, that didn't really cost any money. So
exactly,
there's always routes available to promote wellness
yeah.
without actually having to spend additional resources.
And I mean, some of the examples that I can think of based on the organizations that I have worked across the corporate are, are having those standees or those signboards at different places in the organization where either you've written a quotation or you've shared a value around wellness, or, for example, stay hydrated. It's important to drink water. Having a message
Yeah,
up there on the wall. All you have to do is incur a one time cost of like getting it printed and like putting it up there on the wall, and it's there to
बिल्कुल.
stay. And but those that repetitive जो messages होते हैं, once you experience them again and again, deep down they're internalized by your subconscious.
जी.
Another way I think can probably be training your line managers, that you establish this culture in the organization that once every 2 weeks, one line manager from each department is supposed to hold an awareness session on a topic around wellness. I mean, so those are already employees who are working on your payroll, and if you make it part of their performance objectives, let's say, where you are actually evaluating their ability to go beyond their job description and like contribute to the organization. Most performance objectives already have these kind of objectives woven into them. So I mean, these are some of the low cost ways, practical ways, I think, which can be easily implemented within the organization. What are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree, and my time with the startups has taught me a lot about this, about low cost ways of doing it. Because at a startup you have to be very very careful about how you're spending money, because resources are always limited, right? Even when we were in a non-profit, even when I was with Aman, um, we did have resources available because Aman is a, was rather a very corporatized non-profit, you can say. But startups के experience में मैंने बहुत सीखा है on how to do small things that might not cost any money at all to the company. In fact, might save resources. I'll give you a small example around financial wellness,
Mhm.
and of my current employer where I am, the firm with which I'm with. And when I had joined, there was a lot of we're a very operations heavy firm. ठीक है? So operations heavy firm का मतलब ये है कि we have देखिए जब operations आप चला रहे होते हैं ना, और ये आपने भी experience किया होगा कि operations की team की policies अलग होती हैं. Like
Yeah.
they need to be, so for example today I'm working from home because of certain factors, but the operations team still has to be over there where the operations are happening. They have to be on site
Mm.
because they
Yeah.
cannot contribute remotely. So you have to sort of treat them in a different way, and operations staff is there's a lot of them. So I'll share some examples with you, and one of them is on around financial wellness. And right now there are firms out there in the market, other startups that are working on financial wellness, right? So if you are resource constrained, the easiest way is to partner.
Yeah.
So we've partnered with with a firm that provides earned wage access, for example, right? And so that what happens is that instead of us having to worry about ke, we have an employee who has a financial need, he's requesting for
Mm.
advance, but we're not a corporate yet. We don't have advanced salary policies in place yet. We don't might not even have the resources to fund such policies. We just simply partner, and we've partnered with such a firm, and they can easily avail access to their earned wage if they need emergency funds.
That's
Similarly, we've
fantastic.
बिल्कुल जी. And similarly, we've partnered with another firm that provides online consulting on the medical side of things, right? So
Mhm.
mental and physical, like health related wellness, can be catered through there instead of us having to, let's say, in जिस तरह हमने एक और इदारे का मिसाल ले रहे थे हम पहले, वहाँ पे ऑन साइट डॉक्टर होते थे
Mm-hmm.
available at for example Engro used to have an on site doctor available all the time. Now we can't have that facility yet. We've partnered with someone who has a remote doctor available for our team, right? So these are different modes in which we can operate. Now, one more example of culture and low cost um initiative I can share with you is that oftentimes we can predict that we will have a lot of pressure on our operations team,
Mm-hmm.
and we will be requiring them to work extra hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
So कुछ तो bare minimum चीजें होती हैं जो आपको करनी होती हैं, for example regulatory requirements के overtime हो and so on and so forth. But we also understand that if a person is working extra for 5 days in a stretch, and I know that this person will have to work extra next week,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and all of our team will have to work extra next week because of one of our clients is has a abnormal requirement. What do we do? We start giving them disturbance leaves this week.
Disturbance allowances, basically.
Yeah, we start giving them those extra leaves
Yeah.
this week so that they can
Mm.
they can have a calmer week this week. They can, they and this is not something I came up with. Very honestly speaking, this is something which our operations head of operations came up with. He said, "Look, I have to work with these guys. I have to make them.
Yeah.
I have to stretch them next week. It's a
Mm.
reality of their job role.
Mm.
What can I do? I can give them days off this week so that they
Mm-hmm.
can spend that time with their families. They can have that sort of break that they need so that next week when we're making them work, when they have to contribute much more, they'll do it willingly and they'll do it with energy. And alhamdulillah, that sort of approach is working. Again, there's no cost to this. You know,
True. So I
it's
think
cultural.
it's about being, yeah, it's about being thoughtful and mindful about wellness and also balancing it out. So basically, what you're talking about is, balancing out the workload. So if you're predicting a work week which is going to be like really stretched, so you give them time off in advance or probably later on, so that uh, employees don't experience burnout, and they're able to like maintain healthy productivity levels while also staying energized on the jobs. And obviously it is the nature of some kind of roles which that they require, uh, they require more time, they require more dedication and more commitment, as compared to like other roles. Which brings me to one of the questions I was already planning to ask is, so you gave the examples of like operations team and how they need to be on the field. So what about other roles, for example tech roles, IT roles, or other roles which also have a different work nature, like doctors probably on shift duties? So what are your thoughts around that?
So देखिए कुछ चीजें you should also benchmark to the industry and to the sector, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, product and technology roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being an example. Now, we have hybrid work policies in place for our product and technology teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they're used to that. So they're used to either 100% remote roles or they're used to hybrid roles, and
Mm-hmm.
and that is, on the face of it, it might not seem so, but it is related to wellness because at the end of the day, you are ensuring that they have the flexibility and their expectations are being met to be able to deliver the outcomes that you want them to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
So प्रोडक्ट एंड टेक्नोलॉजी रोल की अगर हम मिसाल लें तो उसकी nuances थोड़ी different हैं, and one of the examples that I have off the top of my head is this. But अगर on the lighter side of things मैं आपको एक मिसाल दूँ, तो क्योंकि मैं कमर्शियल टीम को हेड करता हूँ और प्रोडक्ट एंड टेक्नोलॉजी टीम और कमर्शियल टीम काफ़ी जुड़ के काम करते हैं,
Mm-hmm.
तो अक्सर आफ्टर वर्क आवर्स we just hold a gaming casual gaming tournament, right? And
Mm-hmm.
again, there's no there's no element of costs here, but
Mm-hmm.
there is a cultural element which
Yeah.
what we're doing is there's an element, and this is completely informal. It's not like कि कोई email burst जा रहा है कि जी today we have the Counter Strike tournament, for example, in
Mm-hmm.
in the head office. It's just very informal. We're like, okay, guys, let's stick back for an hour. Whoever wants
Mm-hmm.
to, of course, you don't want people to feel forced in this. Whoever wants to,
Mm-hmm.
let's stay back and let's have a little Counter Strike tournament, and or a PUBG tournament for that matter, and
Mm-hmm.
and let's, so उसमें क्या क्या हम देख रहे हैं, हम social well-being को भी देख रहे हैं, that
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of belonging, and
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of cohesiveness amongst your
Mm-hmm.
team,
Mm-hmm.
especially because this is a cross-functional kind of informal initiative, so to speak. तो ये छोटी छोटी चीज़ें हैं जो जो की जा सकती हैं, और प्रोडक्ट और टेक के लोग अक्सर क्योंकि वो गेमिंग और कंप्यूटर्स और क्या कहते हैं इन सारी चीज़ों से ज़्यादा फेमिलियर होते हैं, सो they're the ones who came up with this, and we adopted it at on the commercial side of things. Like the commercial team also said yes, let's do it. So that's an informal kind of thing that we keep doing, by the way. But formally speaking, I believe that neem.pro में ये है कि जी हमने hybrid work की flexibility दी है. So there are
Mm-hmm.
certain days that they have to be present, and then they have certain days where they can work on their own pace. They can cater to the different things that they need to cater to, because hybrid work की inherent benefits हैं.
Mm-hmm.
लोग अपनी फैमिली को टाइम दे सकते हैं, वो अपना डे अपनी मर्जी से मैनेज कर सकते हैं. आज मैं वर्क फ्रॉम होम कर रहा हूँ, तो
Mm-hmm.
मैं ब्रेक्स ले रहा हूँ विद लाइक माई ब्रेक्स आर इंस्टेड ऑफ विद कॉफी ब्रेक के बजाय मैं अपने बच्चों के साथ टी पार्टी ब्रेक कर रहा हूँ. Right? It's like a make believe tea party, right? So these are
Mm-hmm.
small things that one can do from a cultural approach, which
Mm-hmm.
cost nothing.
True, and which also reminds me of setting up, like for example, having those foosball setups in the workplace. If you remember, we used to have one at Engro back then in the day as well. And, having setting up these breakout rooms with these sort of things. So during like lunch break or after work, employees can always like go and have just like play and chat over, and probably also resolve workplace conflicts during play as well, right? So that's a healthy way of relieving stress, especially for people who are like glued to the screens or who have a lot of screen intensive work. So I mean, some of these costs are one-time costs. You don't always have to bring an expert leadership facilitator to like talk about wellness and like spend like lakhs of rupees, or you don't always have to spend people on these retreats to the north to promote a culture of wellness. And I think ये कुछ एक misguided perception है कि if you are a company that promotes a culture of wellness, you have to send a half of your office to some excursion in the north, which cost a hefty amount of money. But these little things in place obviously go a long way. Uh, Somebody has asked me over here, and I think this is a very valid question. That what are some of the practical strategies for managing stress and preventing burnout in the workplace? Zed, what are your thoughts?
देखिए, I believe this burnout should be a number one, a collective management responsibility, and number two, a line management responsibility as well. You know, uh, a simple question: how are you doing? Sim- doesn't cost anything. It's
Yeah.
I would recommend to all people managers to check in with your teams. How are you doing? Just ask this question, one on one, casually, and in an open manner. Now this question uh, इसके पीछे कुछ चीजें होती हैं. You have to build that relationship with your colleagues and
Yeah.
your the people in your team.
And manage
You
your
have to.
own burnout as well at the same time, because I think if line managers are themselves burned out, I
That's true too.
don't think they are in that mental state to help their team members manage that. And for some reason, usually the teams think that it's a one-way street. I mean, they're the ones who are experiencing the stress and the burnout, and the line managers are like relaxed, and everything's flowing smoothly for them. But at the end of the day, they also have line managers to report to.
Yeah,
And I think everything begins with the self and taking responsibility for managing your own burnout and recognizing symptoms of those burnouts. What do you think?
I totally agree, and I would add that at the end of the day, wellness is a personal responsibility, right? It's our own responsibility to ensure our wellness. The
Yeah.
organization can create that enabling environment, and it
Hmm.
can educate. Like we discussed examples in the past where the organizations took an active role in educating people about it. That organization can educate, but it's important to also have that self awareness. um, and also make sure, देखें, मैं आपको एक छोटी सी मिसाल देता हूँ, in our, like, I report to the CEO of the organization, and
Mm-hmm.
he every Eid he gives a call in the morning just to say Eid Mubarak and how's your Eid day going, what are your
Mm-hmm.
plans. It's a very small thing, but it's just a little check in. It
Gesture.
you know just a check in, कि
Yeah.
कैसे हो, Eid Mubarak, what do you have planned for the day? Oh, that sounds great. Have a great Eid. And he does that to
Mm-hmm.
all his direct reportees, right? कभी कभार मुझे आप सही कह रही हैं कि मैं सोचता हूँ कि ठीक है, मेरे ऊपर भी एक चेक करने वाला है, so who's going to be helping our CEO manage his
Yeah,
burnout.
that's why they say it's
uh,
lonely at the top.
yeah, it is lonely at the top, 100%. But at the end of the day, it's your own responsibility as well, and having that self awareness. And at the leadership का role ये है कि to make that open environment where a colleague, a peer, even a manager, is, your to a subordinate can openly say that, look, I need to take a break, or I need to take a step back. um, and that's where the culture element comes in.
True, true. And for our viewers, if you really want to understand more about wellness, I think it's important to, first of all, as I started in the very beginning of the webinar, to understand the holistic concept of wellness. It's much more than stress, it is much more than work life balance. It's about nourishing your physical being and your body through exercise and nutrition. Exercise is your own responsibility. Understanding nutrition is your own responsibility. Yes, the company does facilitate you, and when it facilitates you through awareness sessions, for example, what constitutes a healthy diet, what does not constitute a healthy diet. But at the end of the day, managing your nutrition on a day-to-day basis, making sure you're getting enough greens in your diet, or you're staying hydrated enough, or making that commitment to go for that walk or that run or to the gym. At the end of the day, it all comes down to you. Similarly, recognizing your own symptoms of burnout. What does burnout look like for you? So for different people, burnout impacts very differently. If I were to look at different personality types, introverts, when they get burnt out, they don't want to socially engage, they want to isolate themselves. For extroverts, because they thrive on social energy, burnout manifests in different ways. They become more, I think, they become more cranky, and their arguments or their social interactions become much more heated. So understanding your own symptoms of burnout and knowing that, okay, fine, I need these 30 minutes or these 45 minutes to just take a step back, disconnect from all devices, from everybody, just take a breather, uh, just relax, probably go out for a walk, go to the beach, and just like basically breathe. So at the end of the day, ये सारी की सारी जो tips हैं, ये once you actually learn that wellness is important, and internet is full of information, and you can definitely build a lifestyle of well-being around yourself. So Zaid, do you have any more thoughts to add? And dear viewers, do you have any further questions that you would like to ask Zaid or myself?
Yeah, I was just reading the comments as well, and I think there's a lot of request on practical strategies, right?
Yeah.
So, practically speaking, I believe, like, if we talk about and restrict it to three, number one, I would say what's worked in our experiences, collective experiences, is information sessions.
Hmm.
Have information sessions, educate your employees. Aisha has spoken about nutrition, the importance of getting physical exercise in. We spoke about ergonomics. Have those sessions with your employees, and in fact, even the act of getting people together to volunteer for to deliver such a session is a, is a positive experience in itself. Um, Number two is to give employees outlets to actually implement that awareness, right? One of the things, for example, that I spoke about Counter Strike tournaments, but we also have cricket tournaments, and give employees those activities and those avenues to implement those things. Aisha spoke about having having recreational areas. And something, this is what I've seen as well in our local companies as well. This is a new trend where recreational spaces are being created, foosball, table tennis, so on and so forth. And lastly, work with your managers, because they're the custodians at the end of the day. They're the custodians of culture, and wellness is a subset of it. So work with your frontline managers, with your senior managers, and build that culture. Though those are some of the practical tips that I think people can take away from this session.
Thank you so much, Zaid. And last but not the least, I would like to have is having a culture of empathy at the workplace. Because so let's understand empathy a bit. Empathy basically means putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and recognizing what you're going through them. It applies two ways, not only for the managers to have empathy for their staff members, but also for the employees to have empathy for their managers as well. Because at the end of the day, everybody's fighting their own battle, and I think it is once you act through that rapport of empathy, when you deal with another person, you always are thoughtful or mindful of whatever they are going through. I think that really helps to close communication gaps, and whatever the stress that is arising because of that lack of empathy, I think that really helps to deal with it. At the end of the day, I think it's just basic stuff. Know thyself and know others, and I think uh, those are the basic foundations on which I think every premise of wellness initiatives rests. So with that being said, I think we have answered most of the questions over here. Um, Thank you so much, Zed, for your time today and for sharing practical experiences. I hope our viewers they learned some practical insights about what wellness is. But I suggest that if you really want to understand wellness, do search of wellness online. Try to understand different dimensions of wellness. This is a favorite topic of mine because it is so broad. I mean, it just cannot be covered in one webinar session. If you were to like go into each of these elements of wellness, like physical wellness, spiritual wellness, sometimes people also forget that is the lack of spiritual well-being which is interfering with their mental, emotional, and physical well-being as well, right? So knowing all these different elements, understanding them, and then trying to proactively find dealing with them is, I think, the way around it. So I think there's much more to come on wellness, and step by step we are going to cover different ways that we can drive wellness at the workplace. Thank you so much, Zed, and thank you everybody for your time. If you have any further questions, please do ask in the comments, or just reach out to any member of the team, and we'll surely get back to you. Thank you very much. All right,
Thank you,
take
Aisha.
care, and thank you. Okay, take care. Allah Hafiz.
Bye bye.